On September 27th, about 11:30, I had dozed off in my recliner on the other side of this window, and I woke up with a chilling feeling like somebody was staring at me, and I looked at the TV, and then I looked at my blinds, and I saw a little bit of a movement, and I thought it was probably this tree. And then I looked again, and I saw two shiny, glowing eyes looking down at me from almost to the top of that window. And at that point, I jumped out of my recliner, turned the light off in the family room, and went to the far end of the couch and sat listening for noise. And about 10 minutes later, my dog started barking. And I went to the back door and saw she was at the fence barking and growling. And I ran and grabbed a flashlight and went out on the sun porch, but I could not see what was out there, and she would not stop barking and growling, and she came up to me where I was and leaned against me like she was protecting me, and that spooked me, so I backed back in, locked the door, and ran upstairs to my bedroom, to the bathroom, where my window angled down where I could see with the flashlight.
Can you describe the eyes again?
Yes, they were kind of golden, ambery color, very shiny, and they were probably this far apart. And I have a security light over here, and normally it is so lit up on this side I can see, but I could not see the security light, and the thought went through my head, where is the security light? And that's why I thought at first maybe the tree was glowing, but there's not enough of it to block, as you can see, the light. And then that's when I saw kind of a waver and then those eyes, and jumped up out of the chair.
Did you see a silhouette around the eyes?
I just saw, I didn't take time to look for the silhouette. I was up and out of that chair.
This is the Area 42 podcast. I am Ray McGuff, a.k.a. Randy Wotan. And with me as always is...
Jake Thorberg.
Still no nickname.
Nope.
This episode is entitled Bigfoot, Krakens, and Other Cryptids. This is episode 4. Get ready. In this episode, we wanted to talk about creatures of myths, legends, and rumor that may or may not have existed in reality, otherwise known as cryptids. One of the big ones, of course, is Bigfoot. Bigfoot goes by many names around the world. Some people believe they're all the same creature. Others believe that they're cousins of species of the original Bigfoot. Their names around the world are as follows: Sasquatch, Yeti, Yowie, Alamus, Skunk Ape, the Grassman, Wendigo, and Orange Pendek.
Orang Pendek.
Orang Pendek. Boy, I was off on that one. Those are just a few names that seem to describe this creature. Bigfoot, or Sasquatch as its common name for North America, they are hairy ape-like beings. The highest number of sightings are found in the Pacific Northwest, but this creature has sightings all over the United States. One of the reasons researchers believe that Sasquatch exists and thinks that it may be migratory is because of the large number of sightings all over. They believe that that might be an indicator as to why they don't stay in one place, is because of their migration. The majority of mainstream scientists have discounted the evidence of Bigfoot altogether. They consider it to be a combination of hoaxes, misidentification, things of that nature, rather than a living animal. Now, I actually have a secondhand story that started this whole topic that I told Jake, and this is the reason we kind of wanted to do this episode. I did not see a Bigfoot ever in real life. But someone I truly believe has always been honest with me did. And it's my dad. My father, Steve Woden, he claimed to have seen a creature that he couldn't describe. He couldn't understand where it would be there when he was a young teenager. This is in northern Ohio, up by Lima, Ohio. I do realize that there's a big Bigfoot research center up there. I know that there's quite a few people in my hometown that are involved in Bigfoot hunts and things, and that's neat. But here's the story as it was told to me. My dad and several of his cousins, when they were teenagers, decided to, borrow an old Ford pickup truck and go fishing for the night. Mm-hmm. Night fishing for Lima, Ohioans is a big thing. I never really dug it, but a lot of family I have do it. So
catfishing, right?
Yeah, it's mainly for catfish, that kind of stuff. Walleye in some cases, depending how far you go, but mostly catfish. But my and I guess bass also, largemouth bass. But anyways, so my dad and his cousins, they get to northern Ohio. As far as I understand the story, it's somewhere outside of Indian Lake. They get to this campsite, they set up camp, then they take their fishing poles and they wander through the woods to this fishing site. Fish for a few hours. My dad gets tired, so he decides he's going to head back to the campsite. So now he's alone. It's after midnight, 1, 2 a.m. He's wandering back to the campsite through the woods alone. He says he hears this crashing through the woods. So frightens him, and he stays very still. And he watches as a creature that was... My dad's a tall guy. He's about 6 foot, right around there. He said he watched as a creature that was in his prime, 6 foot, taller than that. So at least 7 feet tall. Probably 50 feet, half of that distance maybe, away from him. And he couldn't get a good view of exactly how it looked, just its eyes and the outline of its body and the smell. Now I want you to remember, my dad's an older guy, so this would have been in the 60s, okay? So there hadn't been documentaries on Bigfoot and books that you could read.
Rumors.
Yeah, that there was a smell associated with them. So that right away ticked off one of my boxes as, oh, wow, that's the thing that people say that they see or they smell. He said there was this rancid smell, like unwashed, unkempt. It's also wet fur. But he said it looked right in his direction and could tell that he was there, and he startled it at some point. And he said he started to put his fishing pole down, like to set it in the ground, just to hold on to it so he wouldn't drop it. And the thing let out this guttural just noise. And he
like
couldn't...
you see in a lot of the
exactly.
Bigfoot hunter stuff now.
So that sent my dad into fight or flight, and he hit the flight button. He said he ran like nobody's fucking business. He said he ran so hard and fast that by the time that he could take a breath, he was in the middle of his campsite, and he was throwing shit in the pickup truck. And he took the pickup truck into town for a few hours.
That's crazy.
Just to get out of there. Then he came back. By that time, his cousins were back to the campsite. They're like, where the fuck did you go? And he told them...
He just left them?
Yeah, he kind of laughed it off as being scared in the woods.
He just left everybody at the campsite?
Yeah. Well, they were down at the lake.
Oh, okay.
So they weren't... Yeah, they were still fishing, and my dad was going back to hang out at the campsite, maybe, cook something to eat or drink a little bit, So... That's the story. My dad didn't tell anybody this story because he feared people would judge him and think he was crazy. Until I was probably a teenager, he told me that story. We were on a fishing trip.
Yeah.
And I was talking to him about how I read a lot about Bigfoot and, the Yeti and Sasquatch. And he's like, I actually saw a Sasquatch once. And I thought he was going to... My dad's famous for starting jokes with, I actually did that once. And then, so I was waiting for the punchline, but no, he told that story.
Serious.
Yeah, So I believe that my father actually encountered something that he can't explain.
Yeah, and that's what I think is there. I don't know that these things are real, but there's a lot of people that have sightings and other evidence. I think most of it is probably just like grizzly bears. I mean, grizzly bears walk on their hind feet. for large amounts of distance. And they're very tall when they're up on their hind legs. They're very furry. They're, usually covered with tree, brush in
dirt
general.
And, whatever underbrush.
Yeah, and their tracks are almost exactly the same as a lot of tracks that people find that they think are Bigfoot tracks. They have little claws on the end of them. That's how a lot of zoologists figure out, like, oh no, this is just a grizzly bear. So I think a lot of it is people freaking out in nature, not realizing that they were almost mauled by some crazy bear and thinking that it was a ape, because it's up on its hind legs
right.
and whatnot. But there are some that, some stuff I just really can't completely say, no, that's just crazy talk. And I don't know. There's stuff, if it can support, if an area can support a large bear, why couldn't it support a giant ape-like creature?
Right. And also, there's been some really good stuff lately coming out. If you guys are listening to this, you're probably already familiar with Josh Gates, an adventurer on the Discovery Channel. He actually found in the, I believe it was the Himalayas, right? A footprint that couldn't be identified and is world-renowned for that fact that they can't place it.
That's why I like that show. Destination Truth. What's the other one?
Boy, I'd have to look it up.
Destination Truth.
Destination Unknown.
Destination Unknown, stuff like that, yeah.
So, if you're not familiar with Josh Gates, you should Google him and check out some of the stuff he's done. But evidence of these seemingly elusive creatures, they range from tracks to sightings to even some possible footage. One theory put forth actually says that Sasquatch is a descendant of a giant ape species known as Gigantopithecus. Gigantopithecus. That we know existed. Fossil evidence in Asia proves that fact. These apes existed at one point throughout Asia and had thought to have gone extinct hundreds of years ago. However, scientists do believe that some Gigantopithecus species may have migrated over the Bering Land Bridge, like many other creatures did in that time period, and to reach America. And who's to say that breeding in that tribe that was left in those new areas, they wouldn't be so giant, if you will, but they would still be big. Well,
yeah, evolution can be subtle too. It can just be different coloring of fur and stuff like that. So it's possible that since everybody reports in North America Bigfoot's being like large and gray or brown, it's not impossible that the Yeti, who's supposed to be white, maybe their fur didn't change over a few hundred years of living around more jungle-ish areas instead of snowy areas.
Right. And there is fossil evidence that giant apes existed. In the Himalayas, they found several fossils. These are mountains at an elevation that makes it hard for people that are not acclimated to get in and explore. So they've only recovered a few pieces of things.
It's hard to get around in those areas. Like, I've seen people go up there, they get sick just from the elevation, where they get hard to breathe, they lose energy.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to get around in those areas, and especially if there's a big animal that's acclimated there and they're trying to hunt it down, that can be almost impossible when you're up that high with such thin oxygen. And
right, it's
just a few steps can be tiring.
It's dangerous. You got to think, am I going to risk my life for the chance that I may discover something? Some people would do it for a little bit, but they would. Expeditions are expensive too, so.
Yeah, getting around in those areas, just because of the altitude is hard, but it's also steep cliffs, rocks. And that's one thing I kind of believe would make sense for a larger animal. I think they do have bears of some kind up there. So a larger animal would probably be easier to get around for them instead of smaller ones like, us.
Right.
But like, say an 8-foot ape climbing up the side of a cliff would be a lot bigger reach easier to get over large rock faces and, just get around in general once they're acclimated to that elevation.
And this isn't something, that modern people just made up, like the modern times, if that's what you guys are thinking. There are ancient legends and from Inuit tribes, the Chinese, Europeans, all the way back to the Persians that describe giant hairy men or wild men that were thought to be ape-like that lived in unsettled areas in the wilderness, centuries ago. So, as with everything from those time periods, some of those stories lead to credence. That's truth.
Yeah.
That something was there. They didn't just make up the story.
It's proof that it isn't just something modern man has made up, for sure.
Right.
And I don't know. I've seen a lot of things where they talk about how at one point in time, humans may have lived alongside, like, what are the other? Homo sapiens lived alongside, what are they called?
Well, Neanderthals?
Neanderthals,
yes.
Yeah, and other human-like species. And a lot of people think that it's like a instinctive recall that we have somewhere in our, like, wild brain DNA passed down from our ancestors that we believe in these things. But I mean, people have been seeing them for so long that you can't just say, oh no, this is just something we made up out of nowhere, no basis in reality whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it seems a little crazy to me to think that all these people all over the world that have found, what little bit of evidence they have, that they're all crazy and that all that little bits of evidence should be completely discounted.
I agree. I also like that you and I were talking about this, and you had mentioned this, that people complain that footage or pictures is always blurry. You want to give your take on that, because it makes me laugh.
Oh yeah, I mean, everybody's always like, "Oh, you can barely see that thing. It's so blurry, and it's probably some dude in a monkey suit." I don't care who you are. If you're out in the woods and you're scared to death of something you just saw, you've got your adrenaline pumping, and you're trying to hold up a camera that, when you're calm, is hard to get a clear picture from sometimes.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard to capture this thing running or moving or hiding in the woods while you're shaking and running away from it. I mean, it's not going to be clear footage. I guess that one 8mm film that they had.
Yeah.
They had that up on a tripod, apparently, when they shot that. So They were actually filming something else, and that just happened into the frame, from what I understand. So they were preparing to film something on a Steadicam rather than walking around in the woods with a hand camera.
Right.
So, I mean, I think it's crazy when people complain about that. I get their point, but at the same time, like, you give it a shot.
Right.
See how good
Do you think you can do better? Strap on a GoPro and go for it.
Yeah, for real.
So, and then another thing I saw that, let's see here, you were talking about one of your favorite memes. What was that again?
Yeah. The meme has Bigfoot, like, sitting on a rock in the middle of the woods, just kind of like picking his nose or whatever, and it says, hide and seek champion of the world. I think that was great, because if there really is Bigfoot or Yeti or whatever, he is very good at hiding from us. I mean, wow. And it makes sense. I mean,
and I would say that would make them pretty intelligent, because of...
We're very dangerous.
Yeah, how awful we are as a species. Yeah. Hiding from us is smart.
Yeah. That definitely shows a good level of intelligence for any creature to hide from humans, because most people, really, I don't even think will be satisfied until they see a dead body of a Bigfoot. So
I know I won't be.
Like,
I want to.
So the very first thing we're going to try to do is shoot the fucking thing.
Yeah. I want to get one and then drag its body through the streets. But anyways, that was just a joke.
You want some Bigfoot burgers?
I do. I would.
Triceratop burgers.
I'd eat
things, wouldn't it?
I would eat a Bigfoot burger while sitting on top of it, like at the top of a tree, just to prove my dominance. But anyways, let's talk about some other legends, and let's talk a little bit about the Kraken. The Kraken was a cephalopod-like sea monster that was said to have attacked ships randomly throughout recorded history. For a long time, modern scientists deemed this creature just a complete myth. That was until a research team off the coast of Japan in 2012 caught the first ever video footage of a very similar creature that they've now dubbed the giant squid. This giant squid is recorded at over 40 feet in length. If this creature of that size had been spotted by, like, say, a Viking ship, which averaged about 54 feet in length, or ever had reason to attack a ship of a similar size, then it could very well have been described as the way the Kraken is in myths.
Yeah, I mean, could you imagine being on a 50-foot boat and seeing something just swim by, not even attack you, just swim by, that was almost as big as this giant ship you had built? And like, you think, oh man, this ship's huge, nothing can mess with us.
Right.
Then you see this thing cruise by, you're like, oh, okay.
I'd hit everybody with the Jaws tagline, I think we're going to need a bigger boat.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is one of those situations where scientists for a real long time thought the deeper you went into the ocean, the smaller and more sparse life became, because the pressures and just the overall toughness of existing that deep in the water, which we couldn't even get to until, recently. We couldn't even get super deep into the oceans. Now they've completely flipped, and they're saying there's a thing that exists called deep sea gigantism, where some things exist at certain depths that are just enormous. And I mean, if you think about that, that's completely opposite of what they previously believed before they got this footage and saw that these things could really exist that deep in the water.
And that's why I like science, because science says one thing as an attempt, and then they discover information, and they take that information and correlate it, and then they step back and say, hey, we were wrong about this. Here's what's now been discovered.
That's the way it's supposed to work.
That's the way it's supposed to work. Yeah.
It doesn't always work that way, but yeah.
It's a lot better than, say, like just screaming fake news and punching people in the nuts.
Well, and another thing that I thought was really interesting about the documentary I watched about the dude that got the footage of this thing, is there had been a lot of evidence that these things existed, but, since one had never really been caught, scientists and biologists and etc. thought that it was just a big fish story or a random freak, large squid that they had washed up on shore.
Mm-hmm.
But this guy realized that these sperm whale had these marks on their faces all the time that looked like suction cup scars from being attacked by squid. And they were really big, and he knew that these things dive down to a certain depth. So he followed a pod of these sperm whales and waited for them to start diving down deep, and took basically a fishing line, put some bait on it that a lot of squid feed off of, dumped it down there, put a camera on it, and recorded this thing while it attacked the line. And that was another thing, is that scientists believed even if these things were alive and existed, they thought that they dangled their tentacles through the water and just kind of pulled stuff towards them, like a net kind of deal, or their own kind of fishing line.
Right.
But in the video, they actually show this thing swimming up real fast and attacking the line. So these things, they were just completely wrong about this. Like 100% wrong about everything that they thought about these squid. And now, people are talking about how there could be even larger ones because they found carcasses that have washed up on beaches. But scientists, again, are like, no, we don't have any evidence of that yet, so we're not going to say, yeah, there could be 80-foot squid in the water. But yet, they've found bodies, there's been random ones reeled in, they just don't have any footage of it. And again, they're just waiting to find somebody that does something like this fisherman did. get the video.
And I think a good takeaway from this story alone is that you don't know what's in the deep. We haven't discovered even a minuscule amount of what's in the deep.
Yeah.
So I think
the oceans and rainforests alike. I mean, wilderness in general. We've found a lot. We found a great portion of it, but there's still a lot that we don't know about those areas.
Right, and this makes you wonder at least a little bit about other water monsters that have been reported that scientists claim did not exist. Could the legends, say, like based on real creatures, be a real thing, like Nessie and Champ, or creatures like mermaids and sirens? Stories of megalodon sharks and globsters.
Yeah, this was one of my favorite things ever.
Did I read that? Globster?
Yeah, globsters.
All right.
It's just this mass of. I mean, imagine Meatwad from Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
I'm familiar.
Like, they describe these things as just masses that wash up on the shore, and you can't even really make anything out about them. They're just like wads of biological mass that are like part jellyfish, part bear. Some of them said they look like polar bears that are just all deformed. They're great. It's like The Thing, I guess.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what we need in this situation, listeners, is someone of musical talent to make us a rock globster song. Rock globster. Because, but yeah, that would be. Can you imagine go to a beach and just giant, like aborted fetus-looking things just laying there?
Like, what the fuck is this thing?
Have I come to Nightmare Island?
I think I saw one picture of this guy poking one with a stick during the picture. Like, he had a little stick out, just poking it.
There's always one slow kid poking things with a stick. But one of my favorite things are megalodon sharks. I love the idea of this.
Yeah, you're going to go see that movie soon.
I am. The Meg comes out with...
there's two of them.
There's two movies?
Yeah, I didn't realize there's the Meg, and then the Megalodon comes out like a month later.
Well, I will not be seeing that one. I'll be seeing the Meg, because it's got Jason Statham, and we all know that nobody can stop a megalodon shark unless you're Jason Statham.
Right.
But, I mean, sharks are oceanic predators. They're right up next to crocodiles. They're literally dinosaurs that have survived extinction.
Yeah, they've been around.
Of years.
They've been around for millions, thousands, something like that, of years.
Right. And the deep sea giganticism has been proven at this point. I think that
it's not impossible.
It's not impossible. Right now. So Megalodon sharks, maybe next time you go in the water, you go, hey, this is a stupid idea.
Yeah, I think I've said that to you before. I always compare swimming in the ocean to running into the rainforest in your boxer shorts.
Yeah.
Like, there's all kinds of crazy stuff that's in the ocean that can kill you. I mean, you're super brave to do that, in my opinion.
I really like that analogy too. Like somebody says, "Hey, you want to go ride with me to the beach?" And then you go, "Would you like to be parachuted into
the Amazon
rainforest in your underwear?" Well, no. Well, then no. But this stuff gives a good credence, I think, and I think your agreement. It lends a nice credence to Nessie and creatures like Champ. Deep water creatures that have
gone undiscovered.
I think if I remember, a plesiosaur was what they thought Nessie might have been.
Yeah, there's all kinds of theories with that. I mean, from being the certain type of fish that's really long that they're confusing it to be, to like just people seeing logs in the water and thinking that they're monsters.
I mean, I know once that I saw a stick in the water and thought it was a snake and almost pissed my pants. But so I mean, people get freaky when they're around bodies of water. But I think that Nessie has had some very credible people. Like when you watch a documentary, there's always like one or two people that you're like, that guy doesn't seem like a schmuck.
There's some people that actually take it seriously, and I mean, whether or not they believe in it, they'll actually try to figure out if it's real or not using scientific methods instead of just giving their opinion.
Right.
You know, or like completely dismissing it in general.
Now that segues into our next little topic, which we can scientifically discredit and just go right off the bat.
Oh,
Jake?
Yeah. Mer people.
Mer people, and what are they?
Drunken imagination. Conjuration.
Earlier when I said this, Jake said, I think they're a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
And I liked that. It made me laugh. I agree with Jake on this one. I think that mermaids, especially, are fantasies of drunken sailors who've been on the sea for way too long.
Drinking too much
rum. They get out there and they see a manatee and they're like, oh, I saw this pretty woman.
Yeah. I still don't agree with the manatee thing. I don't care how drunk you are. Those things don't look like beautiful women with fishtails. I'm sorry.
Well, I'll tell you from firsthand experience, I've been super drunk, and sometimes beautiful women end up being manatees with fishtails.
But yeah.
I mean, hashtag me too, sorry.
I think there weren't a lot of sailors or ships back in the day that allowed women sailors or even guests. You know, female guests on their ship.
Right.
So there's a bunch of dudes out in the ocean for months, sometimes years at a time, with just more dudes around them, drinking rum, you know, whatever, wine. And, I mean, at some point, you got to get to the spot where you're like, man, I wish there was a chick here. You know? And it's just like the oasis in the desert mirage, you know? Like, you just see this beautiful woman, and you're like, how did she get here? She must be half fish.
See a dolphin come up to the side, and you're like, that's the most beautiful woman I've ever seen.
Yeah. Just getting lonely, basically, is what I think.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that mermaids are bullshit. Now, cryptids are not always far-fetched. Some are just different types of species that are already known to exist. There are ones that are thought to be blood-sucking demonic versions of wild cats or dogs or birds. However, there are also some that are just different colors or different breeds and have more diverse features than their well-known cousins, like the Maltese tiger, for instance.
Yeah, I think the Maltese tiger is just supposed to be like a bluish or purplish colored tiger. Right. And there's been, you know, sightings of it and stuff like that.
Have you ever seen old footage of the Tasmanian tiger? You should YouTube that. Tasmanian tigers are dead. They died out. They're extinct. The very last one was in captivity, I want to say around 1940. And they filmed it. It's beautiful. But it was a very sleek-looking tiger with these, like, it only had half its body with tiger print.
Right.
It was very neat. It, like, almost looked like its face looked almost like some sort of hyena.
Yeah.
They were really cool creatures, but I'm just saying, stuff like that has existed and died out just due to evolution. You know?
Yeah, evolution in general. I mean, it can be giant leaps forward, or it can just be subtle things to help creatures hunt or blend in and hide better. I mean, it doesn't always have to be a creature grew a second head or came from the devil or space. It can be just little subtle changes to help them blend in better or survive.
Right.
You know? So,
and if you take into account what I believe, that panspermia occurred across the entire universe,
then just like that word.
Some of these ocean creatures could very well be aliens.
You just like the word panspermia. But yeah, I think if you think about Darwin's theory of evolution, I mean, life is really, really diverse, and it's constantly changing. I mean, like I said, it may not be in drastic ways, it could be in very subtle ways, but creatures are evolving all the time, all over the planet. By the time we get done, if we ever got to the point where we cataloged every creature on Earth, finished, you know what I mean, found everything, we might, at that point, have to just start over again and start looking in places we already did, because there will be more different varying forms of that life emerging or evolving in those areas. So
I agree. And I don't think you'll ever catalog everything, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, and I watched this documentary that I thought was really cool a long time ago about these fish in the ocean. This is just an example of how crazy evolution can be, okay? these fish in the ocean, they weren't deep sea fish, but these deep sea fish fed off of them. And the way they spotted their prey was they would be deep in the ocean, they'd look up, and they'd see light, right, from the sun on the water.
Yeah.
And they'd see the shadows of these fish that they fed off of, swimming across the light. I don't understand how evolution does this, but these fish developed like luminescence, bioluminescence in their stomach, so that it was harder to spot them from deep down against the backlight. It would look more light,
Uh-huh.
So these fish developed this bioluminescence on their stomachs so that they didn't show up so easily against light. These deep sea fish actually figured out that this was going on and somehow developed eyes that could spot the difference between false light and real light, so that they could continue hunting these fish.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and I mean it's crazy, and it's also a little terrifying. Like, if you look up these fish, they are scary looking. The ones that developed they look like they've got goggles on.
Oh, geez.
It's crazy looking, but yeah, I mean evolution takes some crazy stuff going on.
Well, speaking of terrifying, the Mothman.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that a favorite cryptid of yours?
Mm-hmm.
That was a terrifying story.
Yeah, the Mothman's one of my favorites. Me and you went down to Point Pleasant.
Yeah, we drove to Point Pleasant on a Thursday.
Yeah, it was just a
We
random.
were just like, well, let's go
forenoon
on a
trip.
day when there's not going to be a shit ton of weirdos.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And yeah, we just the Richard Gere film we both had seen, and that's
Yeah.
where I first heard of it. Is that where you first heard of it? Or?
I think I saw some documentary a long time ago, like Unsolved Mysteries style documentary about it, but I didn't know as much about it until the Richard Gere film.
Right. It's a good movie. You should check it out. It's just called The Mothman Prophecies. If you're
Yeah.
into that kind of stuff. But we drove there thinking it was going to be like some sort of like kind of like a Roswell.
Yeah,
situation.
like the way the Roswell has all those alien restaurants where you can buy like crash down, milkshakes and stuff like that.
So let's set the scene for you. So Jake and I get out of my car in this little town square that looks like fucking Mayberry.
Yeah.
And we get out of the car, and I've got a book bag on. And at this point, I'm about 60 pounds, 70 pounds overweight. So I'm like waddling. I have a bad hip at this point, too. I'm waddling around, digging a video camera out. Jake's like walking around looking at the sights. And this old man wanders up to me, and it was like right out of a horror film. He was like, "Y'all here for the Mothman?"
I don't remember.
Yeah. It's like right across. And I had my video camera like pointed down. I go, "Yeah." He's like, "You're in the right place then.
Wow.
I recommend going over across the street when they opened to the museum." We're like, "Well, that's what we were here for."
I must have still been getting out of the car or
well, no,
something.
you were on the other side. You were
Oh,
looking
okay.
at the thing, like, because it wasn't open yet. We got there kind of early. And he goes, "Until then, I suggest you walk along the beautiful waterfront." and then told us where we eventually walked over. There's like this fucking weird Native American murals and stuff back there.
Yeah, it was some kind of war. I can't remember what it was.
This
exactly.
town had a battle, Point Pleasant, and
Yeah.
I just got it from the murals. So
It looked like one of those crazy paintings from like that movie 1408 or
Oh,
something.
God, yeah.
Man.
I'm going to tell you what I got from it. Okay, so there were people living there, and natives did not like that they were living there, so they attacked, killing a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot.
One lady gets away and goes and tells a whole bunch of soldiers, and they come back and murder all the Indians, all of them. And then they built this town there as kind of like a, hey,
Yeah,
forget you guys.
it was a very elaborate mural.
Yeah.
that was like what, half a mile long.
It was at least half a mile. And then at every intersection, like, there were these little points, they had a bronze or like, what was it, silver almost statue of
Oh yeah,
not the Native Americans, maybe
people
one. That was
people
like
that slaughtered
the people that came back and killed them. Like,
yeah. The heroes.
Yeah,
of the
General
town.
Jonathan came back and killed 10 of those savage bastards.
But yeah, I mean, I was expecting like I don't know, Silver Bridge burgers.
Yeah.
like Mothman beer or something like that.
Right. Well, we finally did the loop, remember? We get back, the place is open, the museum that we've been dying to go to because, I mean, how cool is that, right? We walk in, and, I hope this guy doesn't ever hear this podcast, but this overweight, dumpy guy is sitting there, and he's like the most uninterested dude on the planet.
Yeah, they've got like T-shirts and stickers and stuff.
I bought an $8 rip-off Power Energy drink that said Mothman on it. That ended up tasting just like Red Bull. And I bought some Mothman sunglasses.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted there to be a lot more going on. At the very least, I thought there would be a Silver Bridge memorial somewhere, like a stone memorial or something. But there wasn't any. I didn't even know that the Silver Bridge wasn't rebuilt.
No, we had to find that out later after the shopkeeper didn't even tell us that. Yeah. We found that out from just another group of tourists. Yeah. Then we thought, well, right next door is this coffee shop, little cafe. Yeah. It's got to be. Well, by the way, in the museum, they had some cool stuff.
They did have some cool. They had props from the
movie because they filmed the movie there.
Some newspaper clippings and stuff like that. But it was just a room stuffed full
of nonsense.
Yeah.
They had a black suit with a black hat and black sunglasses.
Men in black
and it was like, here's what a man in black looks like. Yeah, we get it. We get it. So we were like, okay. Well, we go next door to this cafe thinking this has to be, it's the only place in town that's got food next to like a Wendy's.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? We go in there, worst coffee I've ever had in my life.
Oh, yeah. I asked them for like a cappuccino, and I think I got dirt in my cappuccino, I'm pretty sure. It tasted like ground up dirt, honestly.
The lady that took our order, when you said something to her, it was like she had no idea what you were talking about.
Yeah.
I was like, do you have chai tea latte? And she was like, what? And I went, I'll just have a black coffee. But
but they do have a festival there every year.
They do.
The guy told me.
We were a week late on the festival, and they do have a statue of what the Mothman looks like, or is purported to look like. Now, we weren't brave enough to go to
into the woods.
Well, into the woods, and then into this bunker where it said to remember their bunker.
I don't know.
There was a documentary that we had watched right before we went. I can't remember what it was, but there was supposedly this bunker that you went into.
What, 2 years, 3 years,
3 years ago.
Yeah.
And if you went in there and recorded EVP sessions, electronic voice sessions, phenomenon sessions, you were supposedly to get a demon voice and could possibly get haunted. Huh. And I remember telling you this in the car ride as we're driving towards it, and you're like, "No, we're not doing it." And then I went, "Fine, we're going to Wendy's." So
I don't like that kind of stuff. I'll just say that. I don't really like attracting things that I don't want to know about, really, if they're real. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess if I was haunted by a demon, you guys wouldn't know about it until I killed myself. Or they killed me.
Didn't that psychic say you had some ghosts following you around?
Yeah. I met a psychic once, too, who told me that I had a really weird energy, which most people tell me that, but that's because I have, like, anxiety. But she told me I have a ghost following me around. So that's kind of neat.
Yeah. But, there's other ones, too.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
the other...
giant anaconda?
Yeah, the other cryptid that we talked about, giant anacondas. From the film Anaconda, starring Ice Cube.
I think those things could exist. I mean, it's not unreasonable to think that there are anacondas.
Yes.
Big, giant snakes.
Yeah.
I mean, to think that there's not one that's 10 foot longer than the ones that we know about is kind of crazy to me to say. No way. But, I don't know. That's just me.
I always stick to the belief that my anaconda don't want none unless you got buns on it. If you know that, you got 10 cool points. But yeah, I believe it's the same theory, right? As the water theory, where the deeper you go, right?
Yeah.
The more, the less civilized area you go to has the greater risk of giant things being there.
Well, yeah.
It just makes sense.
If there's enough food to support that kind of creature, I don't think that it's crazy to say that thing might exist.
Right.
If they have enough food and enough area to spread out in, it's not crazy to say, well, that might be there. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's just like the ocean. I mean, rainforests, you get these little random evolution of creatures that carve out a small territory for themselves or a large one, and they just exist in those areas. That's why a lot of people freak out when they hear about us tearing down the rainforests and stuff like that.
Right.
Because there are a lot of different random species that die from us tearing down their environment they live in.
I mean, wouldn't it be cool, though, if one day they tore down a part of the rainforest and it was just a family of Sasquatch standing there, like, with a, oh, crap, look.
Well, I mean, you've seen those videos and pictures of those people, those tribes that exist that have never even been contacted.
I just saw one recently, and I can't remember for the life of me which rainforest it was in or which forest.
Yeah.
But it was a guy, he was the last of his own tribe, 22 years alone by himself. A group of hunters had killed a whole bunch of his people. That's the only outside contact he had. So now he attacks.
Well, yes, a lot of them will attack random people that try to contact them. That's why they haven't been contacted.
Some dude's like surveying for one of those big logging companies and captures them on video. The guy's cutting trees down to clearly make some sort of new structure in his village. But he's it.
Yeah.
22 years. We don't know what language he speaks.
Yeah.
We don't know what his thoughts are in the world, what his religions are.
Well, yeah,
and we have destroyed him.
I could not imagine what these people that have no idea who we are even. Like, we don't even know that they're there a lot of the time. You know what I mean? But they see a plane or a helicopter fly over. Like, what do they imagine that thing is that's flying over them if they have no idea what modern civilization is? I would love, honestly, to talk to one of those people and just see what they thought this airplane was or what we are in general.
The giant metal bird flew over again, killed 7 people.
Yeah, and you always see, like in the pictures, when they get too close, those people are flinging spears and arrows at them, trying to bring them down.
They're human for
like,
sure.
Yeah, they're just like, kill that thing. It's got too close.
Right?
But, yeah.
Yeah, so pretty crazy. We're kind of winding down here. There are creatures on this planet that exist outside of our common knowledge. It's a fact. It has to be. We discover new species every day. Who's to say that the Jersey Devil is just a made-up piece of nonsense or a myth, or that creatures like Sasquatch or the colossal squids are just fiction? We've barely begun to explore and catalog creatures in these vast and hard-to-reach areas. There could be many unexpected surprises left for us out there.
For sure.
For sure. So if you've had an experience with something crazy, drop it in the comments section below. Feel free to email us. Check out our other stuff on ZTO TV's website. That's it for me. You got any parting words?
Yeah.
All right. Jake says no. As always, ladies and gentlemen, I say the truth is around here somewhere. Thank you very much. Stay tuned.